You know when you do the little like clip or whatever, just talk about that for like that like mid break part where you put like an ad.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You put like an ad and then you do the thing and then we get back into the show.
Oh, yeah.
Remember how you've been doing that lately?
Oh, yeah.
He'll do like a little clip of like the Cuddy Awards.
He doesn't watch the show.
Damn,
so
you don't even watch your own show.
What is up, guys? I'm Andres.
This is RB3.
I'm Sabrina.
And this is the Meaning of Podcast, the podcast where we talk about your favorite filmmakers and the deeper meaning within their films. And now we're doing a very different episode. I mean, we've done actor-directors before.
This is the third actor we've done. Yeah, for sure. Eddie Murphy and Childish Gambino.
Yeah, but actor-director.
Yeah.
I mean, Taika Waititi, we did him.
Yeah, technically, you could count that for sure.
Yeah.
You can also count Donald Glover in that, too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we've done this before, but we're doing a lot of his acting career as well as his directing career because his directing career isn't a lot of films, so I thought it would be fun to bring his acting career as well.
Yeah.
So we're doing Ben Affleck, guys. The reason why is because his new movie, The Way Back, directed by Gavin O'Connor, is coming out this week.
I'm seemingly the only one who's excited for this movie. In this
I think so, man. I saw the trailer and I was like, oh, it's a sappy basketball story.
I thought it was a Christian movie.
Cool.
Oh, no.
I thought it was a Christian movie. I thought it was one of those like low-budget Christian movies.
Yeah.
No, I think I'm wrong, but that's just what I thought.
It's definitely not a Christian movie, but I'm stupidly excited for it.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
When are you seeing it, man?
When it comes out. I don't know when it comes out.
It comes out this
weekend.
I'll probably see it this weekend then.
Okay.
I like Gavin O'Connor. Gavin O'Connor did Warrior. He did a couple of others. The Accountant, another Ben Affleck
He did
movie.
Miracle.
Miracle, great. All great movies. He did great movies. Warrior's an incredible movie.
Warrior's amazing.
So I think this one's definitely going to fit perfectly into that line of sports movies that are awesome.
And he seems to be doing more and more movies with Ben Affleck, right?
Yeah.
So he seems to be having a career with him. Yeah. So we're doing Ben Affleck, guys, which means we're going to talk about Ben Affleck, the actor, the director, but we have to start out by talking about Ben Affleck, the celebrity.
Yeah.
Because a lot has to be said about the intersection between fame, stardom, actor, Hollywood lifestyle, especially during the rise of his career, which is usually the 90s. And in the 90s, I mean, you guys weren't around, but the 90s was very much tabloid-centered, very much who's who, who's dating who, who's in a relationship with who. And at the very top of that list was Mr. Ben Affleck himself, considering that people were obsessed with him. People were curious about his whereabouts. And it seems to be the vast majority of general audiences, which is something that I've talked about when it came to the casting of Batman, for the new Batman, for Zack Snyder's, was the idea of if you go up to most people know who Ben Affleck is.
Definitely.
Not necessarily from a movie, but from the celebrity itself. And it's this idea that now it's sort of led to, even now, The Way Back, the movie you're excited about, considering it's kind of a self-reflection of his own life when it comes to his alcohol abuse and when it comes to his rehab, something that he's been very public about usually over these past few weeks, considering the New York Times article when he talked about it. So now it's this idea where Ben Affleck is coming full circle of rising up in fame from being a good-looking actor kid to now, I mean, a director who won an Oscar, right, for his film, to a guy who kind of had his issues and his struggles, and he tried the big movie route, the Batman route, which is like the biggest character you can do.
The Daredevil route first.
The Daredevil route first, but Daredevil isn't a huge, I mean, he's not Batman. Like,
and
Batman
especially at the time when Daredevil came out, I don't know, I just feel like comic book movies have such a bigger impact now because they're actually considered for various like acclaim and like awards and like things like that with like Marvel and everything right now. I think it's held up to a different standard than comic book movies then, even though I still love them.
Yeah, but he wanted to make Daredevil a mainstream thing for sure. Like,
he did. He liked the story.
He liked the story, and he wanted to play Batman, so that was like his way of playing Batman without playing Batman.
Yeah.
And then he finally got Batman, and look how that turned out.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because you can really trace his career going from this kind of celebrity track of doing the, I'm just a good-looking actor that everyone likes and I'm dating all these movie stars, to I want to be taken seriously as a filmmaker and I'm a good director and I can make good movies, I can win an Oscar, and he did, to his kind of downfall, I guess you can say, with his rehab, with his divorce from Jennifer Garner, with going into Batman to doing sad Batman.
Sad Fleck.
Yeah. Sad Ben Affleck.
Here.
So it's one of those things where it's interesting where his trajectory kind of has taken him throughout the Hollywood direction and now through the way back. So I kind of want to ask you guys, you know, what is it about him doing a movie like this? I'm talking about the way back. We haven't seen it. About self-reflection. Is this somehow therapeutic to him? Is it somehow him coming back to form? Are you excited for Ben Affleck, the actor, coming back to this? Or this kind of role?
Well, I mean, you look throughout his entire career. I mean, really, all of his filmography is kind of like reflected himself, like to some extent or another, right?
Look at Gone Girl.
Yeah, Gone Girl. I mean, look at Geely. Jersey Girl, we were talking about earlier, and like all of it, and his relationships are literally played out on screen. Not only that, I mean, you look at on a deeper level. Good Will Hunting is pretty much like this dude's entire career arc in and of itself, and he was telling that story at the beginning of his career, right? This guy who's kind of trapped in, especially Ben Affleck's character himself, he's kind of stuck at this job, and he's kind of been seeing the people around him elevate and move forward while he's just kind of he's been stuck in his own kind of stereotyping roles.
Why does he do that? What do you think he does that?
I think, you know, I don't know. I mean, I think he
he knows?
He rise from reality.
I'm Ben Affleck. People know who I am, so I want to make a movie that says, "Oh, that's Ben Affleck."
I think that's part of it. I mean, also, you know, and you know, it goes without saying the Kevin Smith effect is also a big part of his story as well. I mean, Kevin Smith produced Good Will Hunting, allegedly wrote it. Allegedly, we
kind
don't
of
know that.
launched Ben Affleck's career.
Launched Ben Affleck chasing Amy
with what is it? Chasing Amy, Mallrats.
Mallrats, exactly.
Yeah.
All of those films, all of that contributes to like how, you know, Kevin Smith is a very transparent dude and a very like a lot of his writing reflects himself. So I think Ben Affleck kind of took a lot of inspiration from that, like as throughout his career. So it's good to see him. It's good to see him explore and do all these different avenues, because I think more than anybody, Ben Affleck has proven he's not just a great actor. He's probably a better writer and way better director. So.
Yeah. Well, what do you think?
That's an interesting thing. You mentioned it earlier just about him, his personal life, the 90s with celebrities and the way they're kind of like under a microscope, like even they're walking around with people. It still happens to this day, but I feel like not the craziness that was in the 90s, early 2000s.
Absolutely. And to be fair, he was dating Jennifer Lopez, he made it very public. He was in the music video for crying out loud. Yeah, so it's not like he was shying away from it.
Well, he personally, from what I understand from interviews from him, he personally didn't love all of that. It was just kind of something that he's into, like he's in this world. He kind of has to deal with it more so. Yeah. Okay. So it's like, might as well enjoy like doing it because you have to do it regardless.
That's why he's like, bro, I'm going to be in that music video.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, too. That was like the Michael Bay era of Ben Affleck, too, when he was doing like Pearl Harbor and Armageddon. Like he was just on some wild shit. So.
Yeah. And it's an interesting thing because I feel like he's like overrated and underrated at the same time. Overrated as a celebrity, but underrated as an actor, as a writer, as a director. Because when you talk about Ben Affleck, you talk about all of this stuff, his like personal life, before his films. Like it's really interesting. I don't know.
But at the same time, like I just told you guys, it feels like he's almost wanting you to, considering he chooses movies like Gone Girl, like The Way Back, like all these movies that kind of seem like, wait a minute, is this about Ben Affleck? Like, why is this so much like Ben Affleck? It's almost like he allows his celebrity to take over his roles almost as a way, I don't want to say to sell the movie because I feel like that's a little much, but almost as a way to kind of, like I said, self-therapeutic, kind of self-reflection of like who I am, and I can do that for a couple months shoot, however long it took to shoot these movies. It almost seems like he's allowing the people to see Ben Affleck, the actor, and Ben Affleck, the celebrity, at the same time with movies like The Way Back, Gone Girl, all the other ones you've named. Like it seems like he's allowing you to do that.
It's interesting to think about like with press and media and everything, how they could paint a certain portrait of you. So maybe he's trying to kind of take back a little bit of that narrative himself and be like, you know what, I'll be candid. Like this is me. Like this is some kind of like little like portrait he's painting for us rather than letting the media do it for him.
Right.
Which is interesting.
Yeah. It's really curious because again, the first time I heard the announcement, Ben Affleck cast as Batman, I was at home And I remember telling my parents, I was like, "Oh, Mom, they just cast a new Batman. Guess who it is?" And she was like, "I don't know." But my issue with it was like, it's hard for me to separate Ben Affleck, the celebrity, into someone who's Batman, who's supposed to be kind of this mysterious Bruce Wayne swab.
Well, I mean, let's not we don't have to mince words here. He's not like the most transformative actor. Most of the movies, he is also playing Ben Affleck. Like he's playing.
That's what I'm
kind
saying.
Of himself. You know what I mean?
I mean, that's my whole
thesis
statement.
It's hard to delineate. I mean, people literally call him Batfleck for a reason. Like it just feels like Ben Affleck playing Batman. It's always gonna feel like even Argo to some extent feels like Ben Affleck playing a Mexican dude. You know what I mean? Like,
and then Gone Girl is just Ben Affleck.
Just Ben Affleck
playing Ben Affleck.
Yeah. So it's like his persona is like inherently tied into his performances.
But it's weird. I'm not saying it's weird, but it's interesting because he allows his agent to find these roles for him, and he almost kind of allows these directors to write these roles for him, where he is kind of playing Ben Affleck, like you said, and he isn't the most transformative actor. Let's go there, RB3, because you went there.
Yeah.
Talk to me about Ben Affleck, the actor. So let's start basics.
All right.
Is he an underrated actor, like Sabrina said?
Well, I said actor, director,
I know.
writer. I didn't say just actor. I'm just saying his work, his talent.
Sabrina's like, whoa.
Let me clarify one thing real quick.
He sucks.
He's a terrible actor. No, I mean, listen, like I said, he's not necessarily the greatest. I mean, I don't think anybody would logically even think of to call him like one of the greatest actors that we have. But that's fine. I mean, he plays the part like really well. He has like a real stoic, kind of old school 1940s, 1950s kind of like strong chin, straight looking like type of personality, which would normally make him perfect for something like Batman too. But it makes him, he'll fit in perfectly back in like the old days of cinema where there wasn't like a lot of range required. I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm saying that in a way that like Ben Affleck is successfully found a lane to where he could play within range and still give like a great performance. I think his performance in Gone Girl is probably one of his best in his entire career, and it feels the most realistic.
And it feels the most like him, like Sabrina just said.
Yeah, exactly. Or something like The Town, which I also think is a great performance.
Definitely.
He's like in his home roots there, like basically he's in it's a movie about Boston. It's a movie all about the kind of crime syndicate of that area, so it kind of fits naturally into what he's doing. Movies like The Accountant kind of show like he's getting the action hero part. Same thing with Batman vs Superman. But he also has like that charming like a romantic side to him too. Like you see him like Chasing Amy or Jersey Girls, or maybe even a good one like
He's just not that into you.
Yeah, he's just not that one. Into you.
He's good in that one.
Yeah. Or he could play the big tough guy, the bully guy, like he does in and his very first big breakout role, Dazed and Confused, right, where he plays like the bully character in that. So he could he doesn't have a lot of lanes, but the lanes that he occupies, he's really really good at, I think. So
yeah, I mean it's interesting. Let's go through his acting career. I mean obviously Glory Days started with that. Mallrats, Chasing Amy.
Yeah,
those are the two kind of. Mallrats, Chasing Amy, we kind of see as the launch of his career. And then we jump right away to 1998, which kind of made him, I believe, the heartthrob, everyone's crush kind of Ben Affleck career, which is Armageddon.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say Good Will Hunting.
Oh, yeah, I skipped Good Will Hunting, huh?
Yeah.
Let's start with Good Will Hunting. I mean, Good Will Hunting's...
He won an Oscar for that.
Yeah.
That's probably his biggest exposure I think he probably had in that time, too. But.
Talk to me about Good Will Hunting, man. What do you... Everything from the script to the acting to the Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, buddy bro Hollywood thing. Because this is... Looking back, isn't this a Weinstein movie?
This was one of the early Weinstein movies.
Yeah, this was a Weinstein... Him kind of being like, I found two homies who are stars, Matt Damon and Ben Affleck. You're going to love them. This is an Oscar-winning movie. This is something that he put like his weight behind.
Yeah, got Kevin Smith to rewrite it, allegedly. Yeah. So
I
think this is one of my favorite movies ever. I think everyone in this movie, from Matt Damon to Robin Williams to just who's the Mindy Driver, if I'm not mistaken?
Minnie Driver.
Yeah, Minnie Driver, yeah. All of the performances, Stellan Skarsgård, all of the performances all around were just like mind-blowing to me. I think the idea of having a character like Will, who's like this mathematician who comes from like a tough, rugged environment, and has to overcome his like egomaniaism and his masculinity to kind of open up and have the softer side, and also to tap into the intelligence that he really has. I love it. I love all of that about it. I love the therapy aspect of it, like the idea of encouragement and, you know, reconciling and like releasing all of those sins that you had on your chest your entire life. This feels like the perfect movie for somebody like Matt Damon, but also for somebody as a writer like Ben Affleck. They wrote this together.
Yeah.
And I think originally, there was reports that, or I think they even said in an interview that it was originally supposed to be more of like a spy thriller. Initially, like when the initial drafts of it was more of like a spy espionage thriller or something like that. And then they eventually got to where it is. But this feels like one of the most personal movies ever made. And then Gus Van Sant's like directing really adds to that as well. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it feels like this is kind of the start of Matt Damon and Ben Affleck's career into Hollywood as being taken seriously, right?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like even from like a writing standpoint, I believe they won the Golden Globe that year.
The Oscar.
And the Oscar too?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Wow. So that's like, and they were young when this happened. So I mean, that's such a good mark on your career so early on.
Right.
I feel like there's just so much room for like growth and improvement in like different aspects of your career when you're already starting at such a good place. Like It can only go up from there. And just that movie is so incredible, and those characters are so fully formed and developed, and it's just I love that movie so much.
Even Casey Affleck. One of my favorite scenes in the entire movie is like in the beginning when they see the dude that they were messing with at the ball game earlier, and they see him in the park. He's like, "Hey, it's that fucking guy we had to fight earlier. Let's get on fire." And they all just get out the car and just start fighting these dudes. Like
you touched on something that I kind of want to bring to you, Sabrina, because I rewatched. I texted you guys. I rewatched The Town last night.
Yeah.
And it's a movie that,
my God.
And then I'm thinking about The Way Back, and then I'm thinking about all these movies of Ben Affleck, and you touched on it right now, where you said it's the tough guy who has a soft heart. It's like, man, I'm gonna beat you up, but man, I feel lonely, man. Like I kind of feel like that's something we see in a lot of
Ben Affleck. That's a lot of Ben Affleck.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he's such a big guy.
He is.
He's 6'4", and he's just super broad.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so easy. You can't come across like that's the difference between like him and Casey Affleck. Casey Affleck is like the smaller, like mousier version of him. So that's why in something like Manchester by the Sea, I could never see Ben Affleck playing a role like that because he is so big. So it's almost like so easy to get like typecasted because of that. So it's cool that he gets a little bit more control to be like, oh, but I also have a heart. Like I'm also soft.
It's like, the tough guy with the heart kind of thing, right?
Because that's like what he is, I believe, like in real life, if he's showing us this, part of himself.
Yeah, and it's interesting because again, I keep going back to The Town, but that's part of the theme of The Town too, where it's like, I rob banks, I'm tough, but
like,
man,
pretty
I love
girl.
you, girl. It's that kind of thing that's keep going on. It really is quite a launch, right? Because like you said, they're so young, and it really is that idea of being thrust into stardom as a young actor, as a young writer, as a movie star. Considering this is the idea of movie stardom. The fact that you can span so much more, where the entertainment reporters love you because you're charming and you're good looking, and then the Hollywood elites love you because you're a good writer and you can make good movies and you're a pretty good actor. It's the combination of both, right? It's the movie stardom effect, where the general movie going audience likes you because they see you in all the entertainment stuff, and then the elites like you and the Hollywood people like you because it's like, oh, this guy's smart and he writes good movies and he's a good writer.
Right.
It's that idea of having both and being thrust into stardom, and then going from that into 1998, the Michael Bay effect, as RB3 called it.
Yeah,
Armageddon.
Let's go.
Armageddon, man. Obviously, this is what I meant by the heartthrob, the crush, as I was saying before. Because he's literally the object of affection in this movie. And not just by Liv Tyler, who's like obsessed with him in this movie, but like by even the dudes love the guy.
Oh yeah.
We're like, you gotta live, man.
Yeah.
If everyone's gonna die on this asteroid, but Ben Affleck's gonna survive.
Yeah.
Because we love the guy. And it's like this idea of like everyone's in love with him, even his crew of like minor dudes, tough guy minor dudes love. I think his name is AJ in the movie. AJ. Yeah. And it's that kind of idea. I want to hear your thoughts, first of all. You've seen Armageddon.
Yeah, like a long time ago, but yes.
Oh, love it.
First time seeing Armageddon, because this movie, people have takes from left and right. I want to hear your takes, and I don't think I've ever heard it.
I mean, come on, man. You know I love Michael Bay. I mean, you can't do nothing wrong with Armageddon. I mean, this is one of the classics. This is easily one of the most ambitious space films, I think, in terms of like the idea of like a crater about to hit the moon and then they have to go and drill a hole. Like, it makes no sense. And I think what's even funnier than the actual movie itself is the DVD commentary that comes out after.
Oh yeah,
he's
Ben Affleck's on it, right?
Where Ben Affleck was drunk during the commentary, and he said, if
like looking back, you're just like, oh yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, well, he even said like during the thing, he was like, I went up to Michael Bay and I asked him like, yo, why did you get a bunch of drillers to go up into space and train them to be astronauts? Wouldn't it make more sense to train astronauts to be drillers? And he's like, just shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Just shut the fuck up.
It's a movie, bro. I think he said like it's a movie.
Yeah, shut the fuck up. Yeah. So I love that mentality. But I mean, that's what Ben Affleck was on. I mean, this is early in his career. And I do think like as much cheeseball as this movie is, I think it has actually like a really fun and entertaining like movie. This is one of the few times you see like Bruce Willis like actually like turn it on because he's playing like the father to Liv Tyler
and the main miner.
Yeah, exactly. So
is it miner or is it drillers? I'm sorry,
Drillers. Yeah. I think they're drillers. Either one. I think that doesn't matter. But yeah, it's to me it's like to me this is dope. I mean, it's just pure balls to wall action. Fun. And
you were a kid when you watched it, I'm assuming, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. And the Rolling Stones song, or not Steven Tyler. Aerosmith.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Don't wanna close my eyes. Yeah. It's amazing. I think of that song, which is obviously, I mean, it's in the music video. Right. I think of Animal Crackers. I mean, come on now.
Right.
Which is also in the. But I also think of the scene where Michael Clark Duncan, Steve Buscemi, and all the homies are like,
oh yeah,
they're feeling like they love Ben Affleck so much that they're singing "Leaving on an Airplane," "Leaving on an Airplane," don't know you. And that's like a famous scene too.
Yeah, Billy Bob Thornton.
Yeah. What do you think of this movie? Or what were your first thoughts? Because
I was
you were
so young, but I do remember watching it with my dad.
I saw when it came out in 1988, so I was like 6 or 7 when I saw it.
Yeah,
so,
I was really young, but I just remember being like kind of like mind blown by how cool it was. Yeah. It was fun. It was sweet. It hit like a lot of different notes, and I just remember being really young. So I remember my dad would have like barbecues, and he'd just play it, and everybody would be watching it. Like, people would be outside, people would be in the kitchen, and then there'd always be a group of people watching it like in the living room, which I think is so funny.
Right.
Because I think a lot of people can enjoy this movie. People can't deny it's a good time.
Yeah, sure. It really is Michael Bay at full Michael Bay, talking about the dichotomy of these prestigious master's degree, doctorate's degree astronauts who are like the most smart, genius NASA people on the planet. Stooping to the level, right?
Yeah.
To the level of like having to get blue-collar drillers, like high school education, high school dropouts kind of idea of like, we need these guys to save the world.
Yeah.
And these guys are the only ones on the planet because they're the best at what they do. They even have, what's homie's name? Playing the cowboy.
I know what you're talking about.
Owen Wilson.
Yeah.
Owen Wilson plays the cowboy.
Simon Hick. I like it.
So it's that
Michael Clark Duncan, R.I.P.
Oh, Michael Clark Duncan. He's awesome in this movie.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
And he's hysterical.
Really good ensemble.
It's a great ensemble.
Really great ensemble.
It's a great. I have a soft spot for this movie because of. I actually saw this in Colombia, by the way. Because of my connection to it, seeing the movie, my first time seeing it. But it really is, again, Ben Affleck is the star of this movie. He starts out the movie. Yeah. He's hooking up with the daughter. He is the star. He's the only one left after everyone saves the planet. I mean, the asteroid saves the planet by destroying the asteroid.
Right.
It really focuses on Ben Affleck as a movie star.
Yeah.
We're going to put him in the front.
Right.
And it led to even more freaking Michael Bay stuff. I mean, we can't skip Shakespeare in Love, right?
Yeah, I mean, he was a small part in that. But that also goes to the Academy pondering that he was doing during
Yeah. Okay, fine. We can skip it.
Yeah.
But to me, I mean, he has Forces of Nature. He has Dogma, Boiler Room. He has a small part in that too.
Yeah.
I completely forgot. That's crazy.
Yeah, and Dogma, another Kevin Smith movie. He was doing. I think at the time, Kevin Smith said in interviews like, Ben Affleck really loved working with Kevin Smith. He really felt like Kevin Smith
friends.
was like the voice.
I mean, they're still kind of friends.
Yeah, they're still friends. He showed up in Jay and Silent Bob's the reboot or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, the reboot that just came out?
Yeah. Ben Affleck had a cameo in there as Holden from Chasing Amy.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And I think Kevin Smith said in interviews that Ben Affleck would literally tell him like, "You're my voice, man. Like, write for me. Just write whatever you got for me." And and Ben Affleck will find a part for him. Kevin Smith will always find a part for Ben Affleck, like especially during that time in his career.
Mm-hmm.
So this is an interesting conversation that I'm now going to lead you guys down when it comes to his acting career. Ben Affleck, we talked about Good Will Hunting and what that meant as far as the prestige, the being taken seriously kind of idea inside Hollywood.
Right.
But from this moment on, from Pearl Harbor all the way up to like maybe 2007, 2008, he kind of dives into this Armageddon effect. And I call it the Armageddon effect because it's kind of the blockbuster movie star kind of cheeseball movie. And I know I'm not trying to be mean, but it's kind of supposed to be a fun, kind of dumb popcorn movie.
Yeah.
And he did that for quite a few films.
Definitely.
And it starts with Pearl Harbor. RB3.
Oh, yeah.
Another movie you love.
I don't know about that. Definitely watched that in history class a lot when I was younger. Yeah. You watched that in history class too? Yeah. Isn't that some bullshit? That whole movie's made up. Yeah, that whole movie is made up.
You know what I also watched in history class? Argo, which I know that's not made up, but it's interesting.
That is interesting. Yeah. Argo's a good one though.
What are your thoughts on Pearl Harbor? Because you liked Armageddon.
Yeah, Pearl Harbor wasn't my jam. The only part of that movie I really, really love is when Cuba Gooding Jr. grabs the fucking machine gun.
Oh, the Gatling gun?
Yeah. Which is actually based on a real life person, by the way.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. Actual African-American sailor who was just a chef or a cleaner or something like that.
Yeah.
He got in the guns and started shooting out planes. Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah, that's the only part of the movie I ever really remember.
Yeah.
The rest of it kind of put me to sleep.
Yeah. How about you?
My dad really likes it. I never got into it.
Really?
The way I choose like Armageddon over Pearl Harbor any day.
Wow.
In terms of Michael Bay. Do you really like it?
No, it's not that I really like it. I mean, I enjoyed it for what it was when I was like 8. I mean, it's Kate Beckinsale, bro. I mean, it's a different level.
It's just all the shit, like all the war stuff is dope.
It's dope. All the love stuff is terrible.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And you could clearly tell they're reaching for that Titanic vibe. And it wasn't hitting.
And they were doing the whole, like, what is it, the love triangle?
Yeah.
She loves them both, and one of them dies, so she's like, I guess I'm stuck with this guy.
Yeah.
And it happened to be Ben Affleck.
Yeah, no, as if we're supposed to care, like, as if that's a downgrade or some shit. Like, get the fuck out of here. That's some bullshit, Michael.
Yeah. I mean,
throw that one right in the trash. You
know? Yeah, it's kind of wild.
Yeah.
I mean, Josh Hartnett, you remember him?
No, I don't remember.
It's a heartthrob.
I don't remember.
He was
you guys
cute.
remember Josh Hartnett? Come on.
He's cute.
Yeah, sure.
I want to get caught in a love triangle.
You want to get caught in that love triangle?
Yeah.
That's a good love triangle you can get caught in. For sure.
Homie disappeared, right? I haven't seen him in anything in years.
You like overdose or something? Or?
No. Oh. Jesus, man.
Yeah, my bad.
Moving on. Well, my thoughts on this movie is that he kind of goes from this to Sum of All Fears to like all these kind of blockbuster popcorn
Daredevil.
And then kind of the romantic comedies too, because before Daredevil we had Geely, right?
Yeah.
And it's one of those movies that it's another kind of silly romantic comedy, not being taken seriously. Why do you think he was taking these roles?
Well, I mistakenly said Kevin Smith did this before. I don't know if I said that off mic or on mic.
I don't think you said that on mic.
Okay, I got correct record. Yeah. But I think particularly with Geely, what's funny is I also, I'm a big Kevin Smith fan, so I just see a lot of his interviews, right? And he talked about how when they did Jersey Girl, Jennifer Lopez is only really in a couple of scenes in that movie. Like, it's really not like the romantic movie that they marketed it as. But because that movie was so successful, that put Geely, they literally made Geely as a centerpiece for those two together. So like it was like the perfect storm of like having a movie that has two bankable stars and they just so happen to be dating and they're just like, oh fuck it, just throw them on the poster. Nothing else matters. I think the budget for this movie is literally $30 million, and I think it was reported like something like 20 million of those dollars were spent on just paying those two. And that's why the rest of the movie looks so cheap. So
wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, first of all, same question I said to RB3. Why was he picking these roles? And then what are your thoughts on this movie in general?
Yeah. For Geely? Mm-hmm. Okay. So I think for the roles, I don't know if he decided it or his people, like his manager, like agent, like
sure,
that
but
kind
he
of
has
stuff.
to sign off.
Well, exactly, but like for some of the stuff, like the Michael Bay films, those are fun. I bet those are fun to be in. Like he loves action with Daredevil and obviously with Batman too. Right. So maybe he thought it was a cool premise and wanted to go for it. This, I honestly don't know. I have no clue. I there's nothing I could justify to say why he would do these. I do like him, and like he's just not that into you. Like those little fun ones.
I think that's
it is much later, but like for Geely, I'm reading that it was once one of the most expensive box office bombs in history. It grossed $7.2 million against a $75.6 million budget. And
how much was the budget?
$75.6 million.
Okay, so I read $75.6 million budget. I also read
half of that is.
Yeah, I was gonna say I read $25 million was for Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez.
It's crazy, and then I guess it's So
is this the perfect example of the celebrity effect?
Yeah,
where studios say all we need to do is get the biggest celebrities, have them hook up on screen, and people will watch the movie.
Yeah,
doesn't matter if it's good or bad. It turns out it's a really bad movie. And no one's gonna watch it.
Which is interesting.
I think like over 50% of it takes place in like a single apartment building or a single apartment room.
That is so crazy. But it is so weird to have two huge names at the time and for it to bomb that badly. Like there was no way they were expecting that at all.
You know what's funny, guys? And I'm looking back at this. 2003, we had this one, right, Geely? And then it's Jennifer Lopez. But right before that, I think it came out in March or February, was Daredevil.
Yeah.
And it was Jennifer Garner.
Yeah.
It's the two Jennifer effect that we had in 2003, literally in the same year, RB3.
Yeah.
He did a movie with Jennifer Garner.
Uh-oh.
And then he did a movie with Jennifer Lopez.
That might have been the beginning of the end.
Yikes.
Yeah.
You never know.
Hashtag yikes. But now that takes us to my favorite conversation, and that's Daredevil.
Yes.
And I'm so glad I have someone here like Sabrina, who's a fan of this movie, because I have a very personal connection to this movie.
Same.
But it starts with the comics. I love Daredevil from the comics, and when I heard they were making this movie, I was like, nah, bro. Like, a little kid me.
I was just going to say, I'm like, 2003.
Me, like, little 10-year-old version, 11-year-old version of me is like, nah, bro, it's over, fam. Like, this is it. Yeah. I'm the biggest fan of Daredevil, and he came up in Spider-Man the Animated Series. I don't know if you guys remember that show. But again, as a giant nerd and as a giant Marvel nerd, Daredevil was like one of those unknown characters that not a lot of people knew about. And I was so excited because when I saw the trailer, I was like, oh my God, this is so close to the comic. Like literally almost verbatim comic, except maybe Stick is not in the movie. But then again, Stick is more Elektra. But this kind of Elektra Daredevil thing that they tossed onto Netflix many years later is like one of my favorite comic things ever because it's much more martial arts centered and it's much more like what happens if you're blind, you deal with martial arts. And this is coming from my Bruce Lee phase. Yeah. I'm still a martial arts guy. So I love this movie, and it's goofy, and it's ridiculous, and it has Colin Farrell with an Irish rap in the background. What is that song called?
Don't ask me.
Luck of the Irish or something like that. Where it's like, I'm an Irishman, and I'm like, rap, and he's like rapping in the back.
No, I agree with you, though. I absolutely love this movie, and I grew up on more of like the X-Men comics. My dad had a bunch. I grew up more on X-Men, and then after this one, this brought me to like Daredevil comics. I was so obsessed with this movie. Even the soundtrack, Evanescence, that whole sequence is, I will die on that hill. That is an amazing sequence. That whole like training and everything. I love it. I think this movie is so fun. I don't think it's the most well-made movie, and it might not hold up the same way other good ones that came out at this time period do, but I still love it.
What did you think of the seesaw scene? when they're on the seesaws.
Oh, no. Getting the Catwoman basketball vibes.
Yeah.
You're just like, no. See, I don't go to the seesaw. I go to the club fight, which is badass. It's so dope. Remember the club fight?
Yeah.
When he goes to the club and he like apps everyone up and he's like jacking him up too. Like I remember this was the first movie. I don't know if you guys remember this, but I'm old enough to remember because I think I was like 11, 12 years old when I saw this. This was the first PG. Remember, there's PG-13 movies that have like a side warning where they're like, it's PG-13, but it's a little much. You might need to be accompanied by someone. Hard violence, hard.
Yeah,
parental guidance required. Must be. It was a weird little.
Parental guidance advised.
Parental guidance advised contains excessive violence and blood, something like that. And I was just like, when I first heard that, I was like, "Yo, what is this about?"
Right.
Because it's PG-13 with that little added effect. And I want to correct myself. I'm pretty sure it was PG-13. It was because there was an R-rated cut. And if you can buy the R-rated cut, I believe it's the director's cut that's R-rated. But in the movie theater, I was just like, "Yo, this is not Spider-Man." This guy was effing him. There was like blood pouring out of people's mouths and like splashing everywhere. It was like very like leaning towards a Zack Snyder kind of effect.
Right.
And I loved it. And I love how this guy was like really into God, and he's like, "I love God, man. God's my one thing," and he's like killing people and decapitating them on trains and stuff. And I was just like, "Yo, this is my jam right here." So yeah, I mean, we have to talk about the soundtrack, Sabrina. Evanescence, "Bring Me to Life." How does that song start, Sabrina? Come on. How can you breathe? And then I'll do the rap parts.
Hit it.
We're going to karaoke after this, actually, guys.
We're gonna do it.
Yeah.
But you know what song is like? That song goes hard. That scene goes hard. But you know what scene goes even harder?
Which one?
The scene where the sad song comes on. Which song.
Which one was it?
It was Evanescence. I can't remember.
Oh, yes. Oh my God, what is that song?
But you remember that song?
Yeah.
That song brought me to
like My
Immortal.
My Immortal. There we go.
That song.
Yeah.
Is the saddest song ever written.
It's the saddest song. It's a sad song.
It's the saddest song ever written. It's so sad. And that track, I still go hard for Evanescence. It's me in my emo phase where I'm just like, this is my jam. I love it. But it really is kind of an over-the-top, sappy movie, which has a lot of, like, again, the romantic effect. Ben Affleck is like, I'm not going to do a movie if someone doesn't fall head over heels in love with me. Like, that's his one thing in his contract.
Right.
And that's what happens with Jennifer Garner. And the idea of, like, him being blind, but he can see her in the rain and all this. And then the love scene, which is, like, the most over-the-top love scene ever, and it's the most spicy PG-13 love scene I've ever seen.
All right.
This movie was wild, and it was definitely following it was from the same studio, I believe. It was Marvel Studios who did X-Men and who did this movie, I believe. And they were trying to make it the next Batman, but eventually it didn't work out.
Right.
Do you think it's just quality, man? It just didn't work out because of quality?
I think quality has a big part to do with it.
Well, do you guys remember Elektra?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Elektra did really bad.
Yeah.
And it wasn't received well. So I think from that point,
it kind of killed the franchise. And I think a big part of why Elektra didn't do bad is because of Daredevil not being so critically well received. Mm-hmm. I think, again, the action is really well done in it, but I think people had a hard time looking past it. I think particularly during this time, too, we're just starting to get, I think this is the same year that X-Men, either the same year or the year before, that X2, X-Men United came out, and then the year before Spider-Man 2 came out. So we're starting to really get into the thick of like what good comic book movies were, and this just unfortunately didn't like.
To be fair, I mean you're right. X2 and Spider-Man 2 are different levels, but Spider-Man and X-Men are still pretty good. The first ones, in my opinion.
No,
you're right.
Well,
X2,
they are good, but X2 and Spider-Man 2 are considered to be like
elevated.
still one of the best.
They're so good. They're still some of my favorite. I mean, we've talked a lot about it. Probably my favorite comic book movie ever.
Right.
X2?
No, Spider-Man 2.
Spider-Man 2?
Yeah. X2's up there, though.
I love X2.
X2 is like
great.
top 5, top 10 maybe.
We're the last ones who's gonna be rocking the Tobey Maguire.
And I've rewatched it, bro. A lot of people are like, "Have you rewatched it? Because it's kind of bad.
Exactly.
It's actually really bad." And I'm like, "I've rewatched it, guys. It's incredible.
It's still good.
Yeah, literally amazing."
And everyone comes at me, and I'm like,
I even like
stop.
Spider-Man 3. I'll say it.
Oh yeah,
I love Spider-Man 3. Yeah,
with Camilo.
Yeah. My boy Camilo came in. We had a whole breakdown.
And we all were like, "Hey, Spider-Man 3's actually kind of good, though."
Yeah.
I love emo Peter Parker.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
That's the way to shift shit up. I like
but again, it follows Geely and then into Jersey Girl, which is kind of cut from the same chord, considering it's another romantic comedy kind of thing. Right. Have you guys seen Jersey Girl?
A long time ago.
Yeah, a long time ago.
Like a long time ago.
I remember.
But this was a Kevin Smith movie.
Exactly.
Which is another kind of Kevin Smith effect. And then going into Clerks 2, which obviously he didn't have a huge role in. But this whole 2000, I mean, I guess you could say 98 to 2000, maybe 6 or 7, where he's just not that into you. That's what I meant to say.
Oh, yeah.
It kind of ends with that movie. But this is a movie you've seen.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a fun rom-com.
Mm-hmm.
Scarlett Johansson's great in it.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing to really complain about. Have you guys seen it?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, but
I've seen it. It's been a while.
I remember my mom seeing this in theaters. It's actually funny because I think for a lot of Ben Affleck's acting filmography, we're just like, it's fine. Like I think that kind of accurately reflects like a lot of his filmography.
I disagree. I think we say it's fine. I think most people are like, that's trash. Pearl Harbor, Armageddon, Daredevil.
No. People like
Jersey
Armageddon.
Girl.
People like Armageddon. I think for the most part, people laugh at Armageddon. People laugh at Armageddon.
Fine.
But people like
Pearl Harbor.
But yeah, most people
Daredevil.
Say, trash.
Geely, trash. Like most people I've talked to before this episode have said, oh yeah, this is the point in his career where he was making bad movie, and just signing on because he was like, well, I'll be the star and I'm going to be the love interest.
Right.
And I get to kick people's butts in Daredevil. This was kind of his like, where am I at career? And it kind of ended with I can't say it.
Right? He's
just not into you.
He's just not into you.
He doesn't like you. I renamed the movie.
He fucking hates you. How about that?
But it kind of has that effect of like, this is what he was doing, and it kind of ends with that movie. And it's that idea of like, what was he thinking during this time period,
right? Where
everyone was saying, "Hey, man, you're kind of making bad movies," and this was the guy who wrote Good Will Hunting. Mm-hmm. What are you doing?
Right.
What do you think that was?
It was just, I think he was trying to make the big plays, the box office plays, and it wasn't the critically acclaimed plays. I mean, he also liked working with Kevin Smith. He did a lot of movies with Kevin Smith, but there's also a time period where Kevin Smith movies weren't as hot as they were back in the 90s, too. You know what I mean? So it was like, it's a lot of factors, too. I mean, I think he would even, I don't know, I wouldn't necessarily attribute it, but I think he might even attribute it maybe potentially to alcoholism during that time, too, right? Maybe he was just drinking a lot and he wasn't having the best decision-making that, he's probably getting caught up in the spotlights and all that kind of stuff. But, I think eventually when he got sobered up and he started putting his career in his own hands and started directing his own stuff, that's when it really turned around.
Yeah, definitely. Something like addiction can like take hold of your life in so many different ways, and I obviously don't want to like project anything onto him, like speak for him in any way.
Yeah.
But I bet it's hard to just kind of be like thrusted into this entire world and to take these. He's at this point he's taking like the easy routes with he's just not that into you with all of those like. Jersey it's like Girl, that's a paycheck. Geely. It probably will do good, and then just move on from there. I can't blame him for making those decisions and his people.
Sure.
But it is interesting how he then goes on to like really kind of take like a 180.
A 180.
Right. Yeah.
And a lot of it came from what you said, RB3, taking his career into his own hands.
Right.
Maybe it's a coming to dawn effect or coming to God effect when you start to say, wait a minute. I wrote Good Will Hunting, a movie that won an Oscar.
Right.
I won an Oscar. Let me start making movies myself.
Right.
Let me start doing the movies. Let me stop allowing these directors to do it for me.
Right.
Let me stop putting myself into these romantic roles where I'm the heartthrob, but I'm not really doing anything in my career. Exactly. I want to be taken seriously. And that's when he kind of started to be a actor, writer, director.
Yeah.
And that kind of launches his career. which leads us to our break.
Hey.
Because after the break, we're going to be talking about his directing career, which is, I believe, a lot more fun. And we could talk about, obviously, his later movies as well and his BVS stuff a little bit, not too much, because I think we've already touched on it. Yeah, but either way, guys.
We did a whole episode on Zack Snyder.
Yeah, and it's a more Zack Snyder thing, too.
Yeah.
Either way, guys, make sure you guys tune in after the break. We're going to be talking about Ben Affleck's directing career.
This ain't funny, so don't you dare laugh. With the 4/5 divide you in half. You getting at me equals a bloodbath. You do the math, take you out the equation.
Check out Sabrina's review of The Invisible Man, available exclusively on First Cut. Enjoy.
Lee Whannell digs deep under our skin with his beautiful writing and directing, completely immersing us into the world of our main character, again, played by Elizabeth Moss. She completely shines in this role. I think she gave one of the most haunting performances since Toni Collette in Hereditary. We feel her exhaustion, her claustrophobia, her fear. It's just completely palpable. It's one of those performances that is extremely, extremely special. I was really blown away as to how Whannell kind of created this atmosphere of tension, especially with our villain being invisible. It's interesting the way he uses the spaces in the frames and like the voids in the shots to scare us. We feel that claustrophobia. We feel like he's anywhere and everywhere, nowhere, kind of all at once.
Come along, children. Now we're going to have a little music.
What is up, guys? We're back talking about Ben Affleck, and now we're going to get into his directing, which is exciting because I feel like this is a step up from what he was doing when it came to acting, at least in his previous films.
Yeah.
Considering a lot of them were like rom-coms that I didn't care for. Right. But his directing movies have all been, is it fair to say all his movies have been good, RB3?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
He starts with Gone Baby Gone.
Yeah. People don't like Live by Night, but we'll get to that.
Oh, Live by Night. I forgot about that. That's the most recent one that a lot of people haven't seen. To be fair, I'm one of those people who
I've seen it, and I like it. So,
okay.
Benny, if you're listening, I like Live by Night.
He's definitely listening. Yeah, I mean, it starts with Gone Baby Gone, which is actually a good movie. RB3?
Yeah, it's a great film.
What do you think about this one?
This one really put Ben Affleck on the map. The idea of having Casey Affleck, his brother, star in this film.
He does that to him, by the way. I feel like he puts him in all his movies, right?
Yeah,
or at least most of
them.
them.
A lot of them. At least a lot of them they have some behind-the-scenes power on. And this investigative case of like, this kidnapping, and Morgan Freeman's involved as like the police commissioner, and what happens when there's like all these things happening with like cover-ups and everything like that, and what's the moral implications of like this whole situation. It's just brilliant. It's one of the most brilliant detective movies I've seen probably in the last decade or so. Oh, not this decade, but in the 2000s at least. It had a great detective story on top of being a really deep morality question all around the board. So how far should a detective investigate a case that he shouldn't be involved in? And once he finds the results of that case, was it worth it at the end to begin with? So it poses a lot of questions that I think are really deep and methodical and really quiet and really, really impactful.
Yeah, absolutely. What about you?
Definitely. I think it's a really good like thriller neo-noir. I think he handled a lot of the twists and turns really skillfully, especially for his first time kind of going behind the camera doing all of this. I think he did a really, really great job, especially like all the things you said kind of with Casey Affleck's character and just going with him throughout this entire story. And then the way it ends, and you're kind of like, it poses hard questions. I don't want to like say anything just in case anyone wants to check it out because it is really, really great.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, this to me was a kind of coming to form for Ben Affleck, where he says, "These are the kind of movies I want to do. I want to do movies that are still kind of genre-ish when it comes to like crime drama, kind of like you said, noir stuff that people can still enjoy and watch, and not necessarily be, boring or uninteresting. This is still an interesting, fun, that he actually co-wrote, thing that he co-wrote. I mean, so he actually has some screenplay credits in this movie, and it leads almost in a progression. I don't know if you agree with this, RB3, where he's progressing. Every movie he makes, he's getting better. He's becoming a better writer. He's becoming a better actor in the movies he puts himself in, and he's becoming a better director because it leads to a movie that I adore. RB3, and you adore as well. You texted, you call this movie a masterpiece.
Absolutely.
And that's The Town, 2010. I love this movie. It's one of my favorite movies of the past 10 years, and that's saying a lot because I love a lot of movies. The Town, man, I saw this one last night, and this one's a blast. What I love most about this movie, I'll start out, I guess, is the fact that it feels like the most Boston movie that ever Bostoned.
Right.
And it feels very much like, yo, get the car. I'm smart. You know I'm smart. You gotta get it right.
Hard.
Yeah, and it's always like this. But the fact that he focuses on Charleston, which is like this very blue-collar, poor, struggling neighborhood that kind of lives in crime and that most blue-collar criminals come from, and then taking the character of John Hamm almost being the foil, even though John Hamm is just trying to stop these guys from, like, robbing banks and killing cops. Like, it really is just basic human decency that these guys disregard. But the premise of the story, Sabrina, considering he kidnaps a bank and takes a girl by hostage, and in order to like make her not talk to the FBI, he dates her and goes out with her and falls in love with her. It's so like, rewatching the movie, I was like, oh my God. Yeah. Like if I'm her, I'm gonna be like, bro, of course I don't forgive you. You freaking took me hostage, bro.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, no, you pointed a gun at my head and now I'm in love with you.
Or it's like that Stockholm syndrome, right? Like people fall in love with their kidnappers or whatever.
Yeah. It's so fascinating because it is kind of the idea of like, he falls in love with the girl who he took hostage. And I'm like, that's wild.
I think it shows right from the beginning, even when she's doing the code on the safe, even from then, and he like takes her hand and he's like, just like, calm down, everything's gonna be okay. Right. I think his character is a good person, and I think that he just so happened to fall. I don't think he fell in love with her for like to keep it under wraps. I think it just ended up being that way, which is a very interesting first like wedding story of like how you first met.
Right.
But
the laundromat, right?
I held you hostage. Yeah. And I think this is a really, really great. The jump he did from Gone Baby Gone to The Town, and then again sticking with that whole Boston in both of those, sticking to like his home, his roots, like what he knows. I love that. I love how you texted us, and I thought it was so funny that you had to turn on the subtitles because the accent was so strong and like you couldn't.
Because I was like, man, I love this movie. I can't wait to rewatch it. And I started watching it. I'm like, oh no, what are they saying?
Well, I mean, Jeremy Renner, I think, is the hardest because he practiced it for a long time. He's not even from Boston.
Oh, he was the best part of this movie.
Yeah, and he was an Oscar nominee from this movie.
He was,
and I also
deservedly
show,
so.
Ben Affleck's career as a director, because for Gone Baby Gone, Amy Ryan was nominated for Best Supporting Actress when that came out. And Casey Affleck was in the conversation for this movie.
He was.
Obviously, Jeremy Renner was nominated, and this movie was, I remember in 2010, was in the conversation for a Best Picture nomination too. It just goes to show how big and important an actor turned director can
super important,
can invest in the actors.
Absolutely, because they know the craft.
They
know it so well, so they know what they can get out of an actor because they are an actor.
Right.
Absolutely. But yes, it literally is like, oh my God, I can't understand what they're saying. I'm so sorry. I got to turn subtitles on because I want to understand.
Even John Hamm is going a little hard with the accent in this.
Yeah, it's wild. It really is wild.
Yeah, and then even going to like Gone Baby Gone, which is like a smaller, even with all the twists and turns, it's like a smaller crime neo-noir, and then going from that to like this is like a full-blown like crime thriller. Right. I love that transition like he did with this one.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Can I say I really want to talk about this movie because it's my favorite Ben Affleck movie, full disclosure. Yeah. And it's one of my favorite movies, as I said before. But it's a movie that we talked about Good Will Hunting, and the idea of screenplay, and the fact that Ben Affleck co-wrote this movie, and it's one of my favorite scripts as far as the way it's done, first act, second act, third act. The structure, the dialogue to me is just so like I love it because it's so witty, like almost over the top kind of witty.
It's funny. It's
exactly funny in a way that you're like normal people don't talk like that, but you forgive it because you're just like, oh, I guess it's foreign because it's Boston.
Well, this is also
it feels so like full and rich that I just love it.
Well, and this came out in 2010. 2006 was the year The Departed came out too, which is also another Boston set kind of crime thriller. But you can see like a notable difference between the way actors are acting and the actors in The Departed are kind of having a little more fun with it. Like you could tell they're kind of hamming it up. Like you could tell it's like Leo having fun. Matt Damon having fun.
Matt Damon especially.
Mark Wahlberg having fun.
Mark Wahlberg especially.
Yeah,
that's what I meant.
Jack Nicholson just having the time of his life in The Departed. But you could tell in this movie everybody's like deadly serious, which makes the funny Boston dialect even funnier because it's like they're saying the most serious like shit to each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So overall, it's just like they do a great job of just blending the gritty realism of the crime thriller, but making it on top of like a really well written, well acted, well performed, well executed gangster movie.
Yeah, to me, it lives and dies in my opinion. Obviously, we can talk about Rebecca Hall and Ben Affleck all we want, and John Hamm, but it lives and dies by Jeremy Renner.
For sure.
And his character of being the guy with the gun who's a little too trigger happy, and he's a little too eager to kill people, and he's a little too happy to kill people.
Right.
But at the same time, it's his friend. He's lived with him forever. They're like brothers, essentially. He calls him brother in the movie throughout the whole movie.
Right.
And it's that idea of like your wild best friend who you're like, oh, I know you're bad for me, but I love you, but oh, you're so toxic to me. And you gotta stop what you're doing, but they don't listen to you kind of thing. But the fact that it's crime, he's so fun in this movie because he is kind of vicious and kind of evil. Like, he deserves to die, bro. Like, low-key, at the end of the movie, I was like, John Hamm should shoot this guy. He shot a lot of cops, and he killed a lot of cops. Yeah. And he's the most, like... I think he's funny in the movie because he's so over-the-top masculine and aggro. The fact that he's like, F you! Every time he shoots. Have you noticed it? I just rewatched it. So every time he shoots a gun, he yells, F you. Yeah. I don't want to say the word in case we're going to be demonetized, but we're probably demonetized.
No, we're not going to be demonetized.
There we go. But
we're too small to get
Am I allowed
demonetized.
to drink a beer on here?
Yeah, sure.
Will we be demonetized?
We're not for kids.
Shout out to Dorian.
Hey,
all right, I'll say it then. But when he's like, fuck you! And he's like mowing people down. And like every time he shoots a gun, he yells that out. And I think that's so funny because it's that idea of like the aggressive masculinity of like yelling at you as I shoot you to death kind of thing. And the fact that one of my favorite scenes in this movie, and I'm sure you know this one, is when Ben Affleck comes into
I was
his
just gonna
room.
say, yep.
And he's like, all right, here's what we gotta do. I'm gonna take you somewhere, no questions asked, and we're gonna beat some people up. You down? And he's like, whose car we're taking? It's still one of the best lines in the movie. And it's a funny line, but it's also like a really well-written line, right? Yeah. Because that's something one of those guys would actually say.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then he goes to the house and he starts beating the crap out of the guy. And Ben Affleck's, all right, man, that's enough. And he keeps going. And he's like, all right, man, that's enough. And then he pulls out a gun and shoots his leg. And I started cracking up as I was watching it because I was like, this guy just like, he's like, no, it's not enough. I'm going to shoot the guy. I'm going to paralyze the dude. Like, it's the most over-the-top kind of attitude. But there's people like that. And that's the idea of like this guy who's so toxic and angry and really feels like he deserves to be in almost like... He even says it like most people who go into prison don't want to leave prison because there's so much more clarity there. And he's that idea of like, I don't want to go back because I love being violent. I love just my violent, aggressive criminal ways. That's who Jeremy Renner's character is. And I can't lie. In my opinion, the scene that really is the best directed scene in this movie, out of all the action scenes, RB3, I don't know if you're going to agree with me on this, is the scene where he's having lunch with Rebecca Hall and Jeremy Renner comes. Yep. And I literally, rewatching it, man,
You're like on the edge of your seat.
I was ripping my hair out, and I'm just like, I can't, don't see the tattoo because it's the tattoo where she knows the tattoo.
And it like cuts to her like walking out like towards them. And then he's looking at him, and she sees them together, so he can't like tell him to leave.
She doesn't see the tat.
Yeah.
It's so well
but
directed.
it's like she sees him too early on to like kick him out of the area or like whatever. It's so crazy. Yeah. And then right when he gets up and he puts his hand over the tattoo as he's getting up because he's about to turn and face her.
Right.
It's so well. To me, that's Ben Affleck directing because that's my favorite scene in the whole movie because you're right, it is tension, but it isn't tension done with guns and with AR-15s and all this kind of stuff. It's tension done with two people sitting at a table and trying to hide the back of someone's tattoo and doing it in a very natural way because he only does it at the very end, but during the whole conversation, which is like 5 minutes, he's just talking, and you realize like, oh my God, anytime he turns around, she can see it, and you're just like, please don't see it, please don't see it, like you're dying. It's so well done. I think this movie's incredible, man.
My favorite scene is the end when Ben Affleck is enacting his revenge on everybody, and he goes to the old man's
the flower shop.
Yeah, he's like Marlon, and then he comes behind there, both like bah, 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 bah. Like they're both shooting at each other, and they both like empty the clips, like they shoot 8 shots at each other.
And Ben Affleck walks away, no scratch.
Yeah, he literally
just goes like that.
He's like,
what? He literally goes, what?
Yeah. And then the other dude's
I'm
like,
Superman.
And then the other dude's like. That's okay.
But right before that, he has a dope kill where he's like, "Come here, man. Come here."
Yeah. Ooh, yeah.
Just pops him.
This is every hood guy's favorite movie. I'm telling you that right now. I'm making that declaration. If you're from the hood, if you're from Compton, every hood dude I talk to, this is their favorite movie. I'm telling you, nonstop. Like,
bro, it really is kind of that idea of like, again, I go back to Jimmy Ritter, but another one where he's like, "All right, I give up. I'm coming out. Right. I give up, guys. F you!" And he just keeps shooting, and I'm like, what are you doing? He's so psycho in this movie. It's amazing. But I gotta do one thing before we move on from the town. Jon Hamm has the best lines in this movie. He is a freaking baller. I love every line he says because every line he says is like a jab. And he takes the best jabs because in a way, he's the bad guy in the movie, but in a way, he's the good guy. And it's that weird line of like, he's the asshole FBI, but he's also just trying to save a city.
Yeah, he's the antagonist to Ben Affleck's character, but like as a whole, if this was real life, he's the good guy.
Yeah, but at the same time, he's kind of an a-hole in the movie. Yeah. Like he's a jerk. And every line he says, I love the line where he goes up to Rebecca Hall. All the line drops he has is with Rebecca Hall, where he's like, okay, I saw you embedding the criminal, taking over, and now you're dating the guy? All right, girl, you do need a lawyer. And then it cuts. Yep.
And
I was like, I love that line because earlier he's like, you don't need a lawyer. And I was like, now you do need a lawyer, girl. And he has a like sass to him.
Yeah.
And then at the very end where she gives him the clue to leave, Jon Hamm is like, oh, okay, I see what you're doing. But you know the FBI is a national organization, right? Okay, and I was just like, yo, that's a dope line. Because he's right. It's like, bro, wherever you hide, like you can't hide from the FBI.
Yeah.
It's the FBI, bro.
Yeah.
Like, good luck.
Yeah.
I don't know. I love Jon Hamm in this movie.
Good.
I think it's one of his best roles, to be honest, because I'm not a Mad Men guy.
Yeah.
I didn't watch Mad Men, so I know Jon Hamm from movies, and he doesn't have a lot, but this is my favorite role from him.
Right.
And it leads us to Oscar-winning film, RB3.
Yeah, Best Picture winner, but
Best Picture winner.
First Best Picture winner to win Best Picture, but not be nominated for Best Director since I think 1933.
Yeah, I was gonna say no, because Selma Ava wasn't. It got Best Picture nomination, but it didn't win. But Ava wasn't nominated.
Yeah.
Got it.
But this is the first time a movie has ever won Best Picture.
Got it.
And the Best Director has never been nominated. So it must have been something against Affleck. Like, it just had to be.
Yeah.
And I think they nominated for Best Actor. I don't think his acting in this movie is, like, particularly, like, the greatest. Mm-hmm. I think it's probably more deserved for the directing, if anything. That being said, Argo's dope. I mean, Argo it falls a little lower for me when I come to ranking Best Picture nominees of recent times. Falls a little bit on the lower side of the spectrum. Nothing wrong with it, though. It's a really well-told story.
Would you put it near the bottom of the past 10 years?
Probably put it like 6 or 7 or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. It definitely benefits from the Hollywood connection. I think that's what really made it go and make it such a big successful Oscar winner. Because it's equally
also about Hollywood.
Yes, it's equally about saving these people from these protests as it is about Hollywood. So, you know, it definitely helps on that front. I think the Hollywood sequences of the movie are really, really funny. I think that's really, really well done. John Goodman, Alan Arkin.
Yeah.
Argo, fuck yourself is one of the best lines, I think, in recent times.
Yep.
And Chris Terrio obviously wrote the screenplay for it. So it has that, like, really rich, like, meaty, like, dialogue.
I completely forgot.
Yeah.
Shout out to Chris.
Yeah, it's overall, it's a really good movie. The idea of Ben Affleck playing this dude named Tony Mendez is a little weird.
It is.
Even for 2012. I don't know how they got away with that. But overall, it's a really, really fun and interesting movie.
Yeah, and again, I feel like I talked about that scene in the town of the lunch scene where she's trying not to see the tattoo, or you're trying to not make her see the tattoo, and how much tension was built up. this is another movie. The third act of this movie, RB3, where they're trying to get on the plane.
Yeah.
That is tension at the highest level.
Yeah.
Like, that is Ben Affleck taking it up a notch and really bringing you, like, at the edge of your seat, crossing your fingers and just ripping out your hair kind of tension. I mean, do you remember that scene? It's incredible.
No, I watched it last night. Yeah, I rewatched it because the only time I had seen it before was like years ago in history class, and I remember loving it then and just never revisiting it, which is interesting. But yeah, so I watched it last night. Still holds up. Like, I still enjoyed it just as much as I did the first time, even though I remembered exactly what happens. Like, I remembered that sequence. But watching it again, I was still freaking out. Like, I was still freaking out the entire time, and I know they make it home safely. Right. But yeah, that just goes to show his directing for, like, all these tension-filled scenes, which we see in Gone Baby Gone, in The Town and Argo. Like, the way he's able to direct that, that's something that he definitely he's crafted that well. And
I feel like that's one of, obviously there's many ways to rate directing and to qualify it and really talk about what makes it quality. But one of my favorite parts of making quality directing, we can talk about the acting, we can talk about the shot selection, the editing, all that kind of stuff that goes with directing. But one of my favorite things about directing and what really makes a director, in my opinion, obviously the performances, tension building. I feel, I mean, obviously we talked about Lee Winnell last week when you were talking about The Invisible Man. Right. But building tension to me is why a lot of horror movies, I wasn't in your art house horror episode, but I would have had a lot to say, because I really do feel like those movies are great movies because they build so much tension and they show the talent of directors. Building tension is very hard to do. And when you master it, like Ben Affleck, you're a good director.
He perfected that pace. He was able to, like, give us exactly what we needed throughout this entire film. Right. It's incredible.
Absolutely. All right, guys, before we move on, obviously there's a lot of movies we haven't touched on, like the BVS's, like the Justice Leagues and all those other ones. But obviously we can talk about our favorite films. And I know one of your favorite films, Sabrina, is Gone Girl.
Yes.
Talk to me about David Fincher's Gone Girl.
David Fincher's Gone Girl, I think, is one of the best movies that came out in the last decade. Oh. It is so spectacular, from the writing, the directing, performances from Affleck, which this entire time you guys have said, like, you guys were kind of like low-key throwing shade about him not being the best actor. I agree, but there's something about it, how subtle he is. I feel like that's a testament to how good of an actor he is, because he gives a really, really great performance at the same time as being so subtle. And yeah, this is him.
Playing him.
Playing him. And, but gosh, there's so much in that movie that I just love. And I don't know, like, what do you guys think about it? Just because from, like, a man's perspective.
Well, before you went on mic, I really want to hear your thoughts, because you said you saw it with your roommate, right?
Yeah.
And she had thoughts on it too.
Yeah. So when it ended, she was like, "Wow, what a crazy bitch." But then there's like people on Twitter who are like, Amy Dunn did nothing wrong, and I kind of fall into like that middle area where I'm like, well, she killed a guy, but I get it. I get what she's trying to do. She's trying to distance herself away from this entire, like, all those like societal norms. It's like, cool girl. That's how it starts off when they begin dating, and then when they're married, she's like wife who does whatever goes with the decisions that her husband makes. So he's like, oh, we have to move back. And she's like, I would have been okay with it, but he didn't even ask me. Right. And so that's like her internal monologue, her diary that she's writing. And it's just interesting. And then how kind of living life like that, like, breaks you as a human. And they mentioned that she was crazy in the past with like accusing ex-boyfriends of like certain other things and like framing them. So we got a glimpse of that. So that's why I'm like, she's not entirely innocent. Yeah. Not innocent, but it is so good. And I like that whole thing of like breaking away from society when she's talking about she's driving away already and she's just like eating like pizza and like candy bars and things like that, and she's just like, fuck everything, like, fuck it, like, I'm just gonna do whatever I want from this point out.
Right. Yeah. It's definitely it's interesting because it has that female perspective, but then again, it also has the Ben Affleck effect too, which also gives that male perspective. What are your thoughts on this movie, man? This is a different Fincher movie, right? Is it fair to say that this is different from all his other movies? Or do you still feel like it's in a Fincher vein?
I think it's very Fincher-esque.
It's got Tyler Perry in it.
Yeah, it's got Tyler Perry in it. Yeah, this is actually the best Tyler Perry performance he's ever done.
Yeah, he was great in Star Trek.
Yeah, for the one scene.
For the one scene.
Yeah, he has a lot more scenes in this one. But actually, yeah, I mean, we talked about it during our David Fincher episode. This kind of returns more to the earlier David Fincher, before, or David Fincher, like, he had the crime thrillers, the mystery thrillers early on in his career. Then he transitioned to doing like Curious Case of Benjamin Button, and then The Social Network. But then Girl with the Dragon Tattoo slowly got him back into the mystery.
Do you like Girl
vibe.
with the Dragon Tattoo?
I love Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Yeah,
I was going to say, I can't be the only one.
Yeah, I love all of Fincher's movies. And you can watch our Fincher episode.
That's
too,
my
like.
Rooney Mara shout out right there.
Oh yeah, shout out Rooney Mara. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean this one to me, I've always loved Gone Girl. I think I told Sabrina earlier, I saw it 3 times when it came out in theaters. Like, I just love this movie, just from detail to detail, from the direction to the editing. It has that very fast, quick, cutty kind of energy to it that, like, is very, very, you could tell that it's done in the hands of like a perfectionist like Fincher. Like, the shots are like so smooth, everything's so clean.
Did you hear about that story, by the way?
One?
Maybe it's just because the podcast I listened to of the background girl. The girl walking in the background, how Fincher had to do like 1 million takes because he wasn't convinced of a background actor, and he was so mad about it. And I think it was Matt Damon. It was an interview with Matt Damon. Matt Damon visited the set of Gone Girl to just hang out with his friends Ben Affleck and David Fincher, and he said that David Fincher was like doing one scene in a bookstore where a background actor, and he was so pissed that day because they wouldn't walk correctly. And he was like, he's not walking correctly. And he was like yelling, and it was like the David Fincher horror stories that everyone hears about. I mean, obviously we've talked about it at RB3, but it's like, yo, it's real.
That's funny.
He like confirmed it. He's like, no, he's
If that's the bookstore scene, then that's the scene where they like start hooking up in a bookstore, and the shot follows follows that background actor walking. So that makes sense that he was since he's such a perfectionist. So
it's pretty crazy how much of a perfectionist, and we see it throughout this entire movie. I like that you brought up the editing, the direction, because it really is like, man, Fincher is a master. I mean, Mindhunter is another example of it. Yeah, you've seen all of Mindhunter, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Mindhunter. I know you haven't seen it.
Not.
Yeah.
But it's a really
very similar in style. Yes. And even similar in like color palette too.
Yeah, it's super similar to Gone Girl. It feels like the most, Fincher, Gone Girl, and Mindhunter connection feels like it's cut from the same cord.
Even Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, I'd argue, is in that same cloth too, like directorial wise. But yeah, it's always funny. This movie has got a lot of interesting conversation of whether it is a feminist movie or it's not a feminist movie.
It's so interesting. Yeah. Talk to me about that.
Like Sabrina alluded to before, there's some who say, Amy's crazy, like she's unredeemable, and there are some who say, well, no, she's not unredeemable. She's bucking against the standards of the institution and society, everything like that. So it plays into both angles of it. For me, I don't actually know where I land on this. I mean, I'm obviously biased because I'm a man, so I'm sympathetic towards the man position here.
That's fair.
Yeah. But that being said, I mean, like, I also see the point of Amy also being kind of the hero in this story too.
So before we went on mic, you weren't in here, RB3, but I asked Sabrina what did her friend think was the theme of this movie. And you said, well, I mean, she thought she was crazy because RB3, when I first saw this movie and the movie ended, I literally was like, wait a minute, was the point of the movie just like, and I told you it was like, bitches be crazy. Because that's what I got out of it. I was just and it's interesting. Is this like a is like a positive
I fall in between. There's ways that I could see it. And I told Ace earlier that there was parts where I don't know. It depends what kind of headspace I'm in, kind of how I see this movie. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, fuck it all. Like societal standards and all of that kind of stuff. But I don't know. I think the themes kind of just show maybe unhealthy relationships, being trapped into something that you don't want to be in. And then all these different circumstances around you, because the ending, they're stuck together. And it's extremely toxic, and it's toxic relationships, and I don't know. There's a lot in that movie. And I fall right in between of the whole feminist thing.
And I feel like there's a lot that can be written, explored, and rewatched with this movie, which makes it so rich and so interesting that a lot of people can have different takes from it, depending where they come from, who they are, who's their background, what their gender is. So for that reason alone, it's a great movie. So great choice as your favorite. Mine was The Town. yours, RB3. You told me one of your favorite.
Yeah. Well, I want to say this is my quote unquote favorite.
One that you want to mention.
One I want to mention is Hollywoodland for sure. It's the story of George Reeves. He played Ben Affleck. It's not necessarily the story of George Reeves, but it's about George Reeves, who's the actor who played Superman in the early 1950s TV shows. He wasn't a well-renowned actor. He kind of hated it. And even in this movie, it portrays how much of an alcoholic George Reeves became because how much he hated playing Superman back in the day. I mean, this was 1950, and George Reeves wanted to be a movie star, but this is a TV superhero show. It looked ridiculous back then, right? But it's all about how, in real life, George Reeves was, quote, either committed suicide or, quote, murdered because, it's undetermined. There's evidence that kind of alludes to both. But it was during a time when he was going through a breakup with the wife of Eddie Mannix. Now, people don't know about Eddie Mannix. I talked about him briefly on the Coen Brothers episode for the movie, the Hollywood movie that the Coen Brothers just did.
Yeah.
Hail Caesar.
Hail Caesar.
Eddie Mannix was like a Hollywood fixer, one of those dudes who, like, if somebody wakes up with like a dead prostitute in their house, he has to clean it up. He fixes it, right? So he was one of those guys back in the 1950s. He was married to, and I forget his companion's name, who's played by Diane Lane, Tony Mannix. And Tony Mannix was dating George Reeves, but Eddie Mannix was like totally cool with it. But because Eddie Mannix was like towards the end of his health, and he knew his wife wanted to move on. Things got kind of sticky when George Reeves was kind of abandoning Tony, and it kind of ended up pissing off Eddie. And the rumor is that maybe Eddie Mannix might have set him up, or some may speculate that Tony might have killed him herself. So I'm explaining all this to say that the movie is actually about a fictionalized journalist played by Adrian Brody, who's trying to figure out like what happened in this case and what really happened and what didn't happen. So it's a really, really interesting movie. A lot of classic Hollywood stuff in it, like a lot of really interesting tidbits about history of Hollywood and the 1950s and society just in general, and alcoholism and masculinity back during that time too. So it deals with a lot of really crucial themes.
And it's interesting how that's like one of the first movies he ever did, right? That's early on, I believe.
It came out in 2006, so it was deep into his career. Yeah, but it's so similar to what we talked about earlier in the episode, the Ben Affleck effect, and how he's always kind of playing himself in every movie. Yeah. And by the sounds of it, it sounds like he's doing that in that one. Yeah, he's playing an actor who hates being an actor, and I think that if there's nothing more that is indicative of Ben Affleck, that's him. You know what I mean? So I think he's really, really great in this movie.
That's crazy. Yeah. Well, I mean, on that note, what an interesting, fascinating career so far, because obviously there's still a lot more to give. Do you feel like he's still going to direct more movies, or do you feel like he's over
so we didn't even touch on Live by Night, by the way.
Yeah.
I could say words on Live by Night. Hold on, let me say something on Live by Night, because I do want to say Live by Night should go down as the most woke gangster movie ever made. It should go down as the most woke gangster movie ever made.
Is that a good thing?
I mean,
like nowadays, woke is like...
I mean, they use it as a derogatory term. I don't use it as a derogatory term.
I don't.
But it's about this, again, Boston gang member or gangster who it takes place during like 4 different parts of his like life. At one part, he's like directly fighting the KKK. At another part of the story, he's like, because he has like this African American / I think Colombian girlfriend. Played by somebody. Zoe Saldana. Okay. Miguel plays a part in it as well. And there's other parts in the movie where he's like, it's a gangster movie during the Prohibition era, but he's actively fighting for like social issues like of whatever time. Yeah, so it's all fictional. I don't think any of it is real, but it is kind of woke and cool. So I like it.
Cool.
It's cool.
It's like the Watchmen. Hooded Justice.
Hooded Justice, yeah. Even though he's a white dude, yeah.
Interesting,
for sure.
I guess I'll check it out.
You should check it out. I mean, a lot of people love it, and I think it would have. It's only 2 hours and 9 minutes. You could clearly tell they cut out chunks of it. Like they cut out chunks. If this was like a 4-hour movie, I think it would have worked a lot better.
Interesting.
Yeah, I will watch it.
Put it on Netflix.
Yeah. Give me that Scorsese, baby. I like it.
Alrighty, guys. With that, that is our episode on Ben Affleck. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that, listening to that, watching that on YouTube. If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel, First Cut. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at FirstCutTMO, and obviously listen to us on Spotify, on iTunes, and rank us. And make sure, if you watch us only on YouTube, make sure you also check out those other avenues, because it helps and it gives us a lot of love, and we appreciate it all. Alrighty, guys. I am Andres.
This is RB3.
I'm Sabrina.
We are peacing out, guys. Peace out.